get to wrap up our series on anxiety, and as someone said at the beginning of the series, that video gives me anxiety. And there's lots of things in this world that can give us anxiety, like, having a high school graduate and sending them off to college on their own. Like, that can be an anxious time, one that we're dealing with right now. But there are some other things maybe in your life that are causing you anxiety, and I hope that if you're just now joining us in this series, that you would go back and watch the rest of them, either on our app or on YouTube. You can watch them on Facebook and check those out. This coming week, we're going to be starting a summer series. It's all about some of the big Bible stories. So all of the ones that you kind of remember from any kind of vacation Bible school or anything like that. Even if you've never been to church before, these are probably some of those stories that you've heard at least a little bit about. And I'm really excited not just to hit that, but also with summer comes our summer teaching team. And so we have a few different guys that step in and preach a message throughout the summer. And so we've got 4 of those scheduled over the next coming couple of months. And it's going to be pretty exciting to see what God is going to be sharing through those guys. Anxiety. How many of you, in driving a car, cruising down the road, and one of those little lights come up on your dash? Know what I'm talking about? Not the turn signal. You can bump that one off. Right? I'm talking about one of those other ones. Maybe it looks like an engine block. Ooh. Does that give you a little anxiety when one of those things pop on? What I'm thinking is, cha-ching, right? This is not a good feeling. My car is about to be broke, and I'm about to be broke, and this is probably not going to end well. And so that can give us anxiety. And I want to ask you a very pointed question. Is the light the source of your anxiety? The answer is no. Right? The light serves as a warning about a bigger problem. Right? The light working is actually a good thing. When the light is not working and you encounter problems, that's a bad thing. Right? And some of you know because you're still driving around 2 years later after your light went on, and you're like, you know what, hey, it's all right, it's still moving. Right? So you've learned to just kind of ignore this light, this warning light. One of the problems is you and I get really good about ignoring those kind of lights and signals in our own life. Right? It initially pops up and we go, oh yeah, I should do something about that. And the next time we get in, oh yeah, I should do something. It's kind of like your car gets down into that needing gas light coming on. And we go, oh, I should do something about that. Oh, I'm just running across town. It'll be fine. You run across town, do that thing, come back and park. And the next time you get in, and you go, oh yeah, I need to do something about that. And you, oh, I'm still in a hurry. I'm going to just run across town. You come back, and every once in a while you get by a gas station. You're like, oh, so it's raining today. I don't know that. I'll come back later. Pretty soon you're like, I wonder if I can make it to the gas station. Right? But the warning light that we're talking about in life is anxiety. For us guys, anxiety is usually not the problem. It's a problem, don't get me wrong. But it's usually triggering us to a greater problem. And one of the focuses we have at Connection is to be a pray first church. And I want to share with you that I believe anxiety is one of those warning signs that says we need to lean on God a little bit more. Right? We need to lean into God. We need to take it to Him in prayer. And when that anxiety light goes off, that should be in our minds a trigger to say, you know what, I need to pray about this. But what oftentimes happens? Oh, I'm super busy right now. I just need to run over here and do this thing, and I'll pray about that later. Or, you know what? I just got to fix it myself right now because I'm just going crazy. So I'll just go over here and work, and I'll try to get this thing going. Or we get so caught in our thought process that we're lost to the presence of God amidst our problems. It can be a challenge that we face. One of my favorite Bible stories is from 1 Kings. And in 1 Kings, we hear the story of a man named Elijah. He's got lots of different stories there, but in chapter 18, he does this crazy, amazing thing where he challenges the false prophets. They are serving after other gods, Baal and Asherah. And the Israelites are not supposed to be chasing after these gods. They're not supposed to be raising them in any kind of level of importance, let alone above God or equal to God. But they're doing it. They're chasing after all of the things throughout Scripture that God said don't do. And there's one prophet left. His name is Elijah. And Elijah has the audacity, he has the faith to take on 850 prophets by himself. He just goes up, and it's like when you read through chapter 18, there is no hesitation at all within him. First of all, he challenges them. He challenges their authority. So these gods are gods of fertility. And one of the fertility pieces, besides our intimacy and relationships, is that of the crops. So the rains come down, and they water the fields, and the crops grow. And so when Elijah steps onto the scene, he said, hey, it's not going to rain until I say it's going to rain. What? Like, I don't know any of us that have that much faith in God that we're just going to step up to somebody doing something wrong and go, you know what? Hey, let me tell you, that thing that you're looking for, that thing that you're celebrating, it's not going to happen until I let you know it's going to happen. Right? Maybe we have some parents that talk to their kids that way, but that's not generally the way that we approach our problems and people who have challenges. But they are issued this huge challenge. So let's build an altar. We're going to put a bull on it, an animal, and we're going to sacrifice this animal. Normally they would light a fire and they would burn this animal as a fragrant offering to their gods. And so there's a couple stipulations, right? We're going to put on there, but hey, no fire. All you can do is talk to your God and see if he can bring the fire. And so those guys, like, they are praying hard. They're doing their own little fire dance going on. They're cutting themselves. They're just trying anything they can to make it happen. And Elijah's over on the side. I just kind of picture him in his easy chair. He's waiting for his turn, right? He's on deck. And he's like, what's the matter? Is your God sleeping? Come on, maybe you ought to pray a little harder. Cut a little deeper. Maybe you should dance a little more. Come on, make it happen. Bring down the fire. Nothing. He steps up. It's his turn. He's like, let's up the stakes a little bit, guys. Can you go grab some water and like just dump it all over the... Oh, by the way, build a trench too. Like dump the water, fill the trench. No, that's not enough. 3 times. Let's soak this thing. Praise to God. Fire comes down. The whole thing. Just, dude, it's lit. Right? The party is lit. And Elijah just takes it to them, and all of these prophets are just annihilated. Elijah wins. Great victory. And then chapter 19. Right? There's not a whole lot of anxiety, at least in Elijah during that moment. Maybe in the prophets, right? After Elijah does this whole thing. But in Elijah, it seems like he's got this thing figured out. He is in tune with God. Things are happening. Right? The rain comes in because he said so, because God allowed it to happen at that moment in time. But then the king, he's an evil king, Ahab, he has a wife who's way worse, Jezebel. And Jezebel hears about the whole thing going down, and Jezebel's like, hey, you find that Elijah guy for me, he's going to pay. And this same guy that takes on 850 prophets tucks his tail and runs. He's out of Dodge. And not only does he run, he cowers in misery. He's having a pity party. Can you believe it? This mountaintop experience for Elijah, and like the very next day, one woman steps up to him and he's cowering, he's shaking in his boots. He's anxious. He's lost his focus. Guys, sometimes we lose our focus too. And one of the times that we lose our focus, believe it or not, is after something great, really, really great just happened. You just went to a conference, you just heard a message, you just read a story, you just gone through a study, and you're thinking, oh, this is great, this is awesome, I just need to tell everybody. And then things start happening, and you start coming down that mountain, but it's not like you're on a slide coming down it, like you're hitting all the bumps and twists and turns coming down the mountain, and you're at the bottom, and you're like, I'm so tired, just drained. I'm not feeling it. Right? And we forget that we were just on top of the mountain. Matter of fact, if we remember it, that mountain feels like it was weeks, years removed from where we are. And we get anxious because we take our eyes off of God. Then this crazy story happens in 1 Kings 19. And this time it's not Elijah bringing the hurt, it's God, but he brings it in an amazing way. He tells Elijah to go out and wait on his presence. Right? And so these things happen, the wind happens, the earth shakes, like all of these amazing things. You're like, oh, the power and the authority of God is there. But each time it says, but God was not there. God was not in the wind. Right? But then there was this still, small voice. It's like a voice of peace. His life and his mind is falling apart. Maybe you're going through something right now. And it feels like your life is falling apart. It feels like things just aren't measuring up. It feels like there's not enough money at the end of the month for the bills that you still have rolling in. It feels like your family is falling apart at the seams. You're struggling to find employment. The health in you or in somebody else is hurting. You're wondering about your marriage, or you're wondering about why you're not married yet, or you're worried about your kids or why you're not having kids. And all of these things just kind of, they just weigh down. Right? And then you hear, amidst all of the chaos in the world, that still small voice of God. Guys, I want you to hear it this morning. I can't force it upon you, but if I could, just for a moment, just close your eyes, whatever you're going through, and just hear this. It's going to be okay. I've got this. I've got this. See, Elijah lost the view of the presence of God. And his anxiety light was blinking like crazy. And he was doing some pretty irrational things. He was so worried that Jezebel was going to kill him that he told God that he wanted to die. Why? You afraid she's going to kill you? You're going to kill yourself just so she doesn't kill you, huh? That makes a lot of sense. Right? A lot of times whenever we get anxious, we do crazy things that just don't make sense. We run from one problem to another problem. That thing that we ran to years ago that we thought was going to fix our problem, numb our problem, take away our problem, help us forget about our problem, we run right back there. And guess what? It still doesn't fix our problem. Because anxiety makes us do stupid, irrational things that we just don't grasp. So what's the answer? Well, if anxiety is not it, because when we focus on our problems, it creates this sense of panic, then it's understanding the presence and the power of God. Because only in that can we really find peace. So Elijah was able to have a heart-to-heart with God. He was able to share with him, like, God, I am feeling all alone. And maybe your anxiety has got you feeling all alone. God, I am feeling all alone. There's nobody else. There's no other prophets. It's just me against the world. So in his way, God says, I got this. So go and anoint this guy as the king of Samaria. Go and anoint this guy as the king of Israel. And guess what? When you don't got this, he's got this. And when he don't got this, he got this. And when he don't got this, I got this. Right? I'm going to build in some redundancy. You're not alone. Guys, I want you to know whatever you're going through, you're not alone. Satan is a great deceiver. And one of the things that he wants us to feel is that we're all alone. That nobody's going to get it. That nobody is going to understand it. That we are just a screw up and we're not going to get any better. But you're not alone. God is speaking into your situation. When your panic light is going off, He wants to bring peace. So we've been in the book of Philippians. And I'm going to take you to this one passage in Philippians that we just continue to hammer on. It's Philippians chapter 4. Philippians chapter 4. So again, Paul is writing this to the church in Philippi while they're enduring persecution and he's in prison. And he says in verse 4, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand." Guys, the Lord is at hand. Take that problem. List those problems. You've got an index card that we gave you earlier. If you don't have one of those, there's some more over here at the prayer wall, just at the end of the welcome table. And take one of those cards and start writing down some of those things that you're worrying about. Right? Some of those things that are triggering these panic lights, these warning lights to go off in your life. And write them on the card. Just throughout the message. But I want you to hear this. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything. Why? Did you catch it? Why? Because the Lord is at hand. Emmanuel is not just Christmas, right? The Lord is with us. God in the flesh is here with us. The Lord is near you. Do not have to be anxious, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Instead of worrying about it, instead of being consumed by panic, pursue peace through prayer. Right? Those things that you're listing out on your piece of paper, and I hope that you're listing them out. If you don't have a pen and you just want to mentally just ascribe them to the paper, that's cool. Right? If you're watching online and you want to type them in, that's good too. But I want to ask you a really pointed question that my wife oftentimes asks me. Have you prayed about it yet? Have you prayed about it yet? That thing that you're allowing to consume you, that thing that's taking over your life, that problem that without the right perspective just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Have you given it to God? Have you begun to follow what He wants you to say? We've talked a lot in this series about reprogramming the way that we think. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Let the lies be dismissed. Call them out and replace them with the truth of God. Are you praying out to God? Are you digging into His truth? Are you allowing it to reprogram the way that you're thinking? Guys, there's so many things that we can be anxious about, but we have to give them to God. There's another passage we've hit a number of times, and this is in 1 Peter. In 1 Peter, it talks about Satan. He says in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, "Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, he prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour." Right? We have to be ready. We have to be alert. We have to be on guard, on call, because he's looking to trap us, to devour us. We have to, in verse 9, resist him, being firm in our faith. How do we get firm in our faith? By being in the Word of God, by being in prayer, in communion with God. Resist him. But I want to share with you something that happens in the two previous verses. Verse 6. "Humble yourself, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time He may exalt you." Yes, so many times, my source of anxiety is I want to control things. I want to be in charge. I want things to happen my way. And maybe that's the source of your anxiety. Maybe it's pride. Maybe there's some ego attached to it. And maybe one of the reasons you're not reaching out to God, maybe one of the reasons you're not reaching out to your small group or to your church family in general is because of pride. You can't possibly admit that you have this kind of an issue in your life. But I want you to hear the words of Peter. Humble yourselves. Humble yourselves. Right? Get off your high horse and get on your knees. Humble yourself under the mighty hand of God. Why? Because when we humble ourselves, He exalts us. He lifts us up. Instead of us thinking that we've got the answers, us thinking we can fix the problems, we have to remember that His presence is near, and we don't have all the answers, but we know the one who does. And in verse 7, we cast what? All of our anxieties on Him, because He cares for you. He cares for us. Right? We trust Him because He cares. God is near. And you and I, so many times, like Elijah, we've just had this mountaintop experience. We've just come face to face with God. We've just done something completely amazing. He's altered our life in just a tremendous way. And the next day, when things get tough, we forget that we're in the presence of God. And we hold on to our anxieties. We're afraid to give them up. We're afraid of our insecurity. And we're driven into a stalemate by our pride. But if we can humble ourselves and cast our anxiety on Him, He will lift us up. Peter knew this all too well. There's a couple situations, one of which, the feeding of the 5,000, John chapter 6. It's recorded in other Gospels too. But I found it interesting as I was reading along in one of the books as I was preparing for this message. It talked about in the feeding of the 5,000, all of these people here, and that's just counting the men. There's women and children on top of that. They're listening to Jesus. They've seen Him do miracles. Like they are just drawn in. This is a huge spiritual revival. And then Jesus, talking to His disciples, says, guys, I think it's lunchtime. Maybe we should get some food together. Bring it in. And their answer was, remember, they had seen Jesus heal the sick, deliver sight to the blind, hearing to the deaf, lame people walk. And they tell Jesus, we don't have enough food, we don't have enough money, let's send these guys home. And they forgot that they were in the presence of the Son of God. And He did something amazing in feeding them with 5 loaves and 2 fish. Guys, I don't ever want us, but I know that it's too far-fetched, right, for us to really grasp this because we all ebb and flow in our life. But I want us just to receive this message that whenever it seems like the impossible is in front of you, you serve a God who does the miraculous. And those things that you're consumed with, the things that have power over you, are no match for the King of Kings. They are no match for the Son of God. Now, Peter got himself into a jam too. He was in the boat, riding along with the other disciples. Jesus comes walking to them on the water. Crazy story. Hey guys, I'll just catch up later. Don't worry about me. Got my aqua shoes on. Walking across the water. The disciples, they're flipping out. They're thinking they're seeing a ghost walking to them on the water. Peter is the first one that has any kind of inclination that this is actually Jesus. I don't know what made him think that, but he calls out in a voice of faith, Jesus, if that's you, just ask me to come out and I'll come out. He hops out of the boat and starts walking on the water. He forgot he was human. Right? But his eyes were on the Son of God, and He was doing something completely miraculous. And every time I share this story, I want to mention where the other disciples were. They're stuck in the boat. Right? So don't go thinking like Peter's a failure. Peter's the one guy who had the audacity to get out of the boat. I mean, he's a knucklehead, don't get me wrong. But he got out of the boat, and he was walking on water. And for a split moment, man, he had to be feeling just ecstatic. Dude, guys, hey, did you see this? Oh, wind, waves, sinking. What's he do? He calls out to Jesus. Guys, when your problems get overwhelming, when you start sinking, instead of allowing your problems just to engulf you, and it feels like you're drowning and you just can't take another breath, you can't move anymore, remember this, you need to cry out to Jesus. Stick up a hand to God and let Him do what you cannot do. He has power over nature. over the physical. You and I, we may not be able to do it, but we know one who can. And we have to trust in him. One of the amazing things that I came across, and I completely forgot my box. Pastor Josh, will you grab that box back there for me? Bring that up. This is for us. It says cutlery on it. Ignore that. Let's pretend we can't read. So today, this is our God box. Now, this doesn't mean that God fits in the box. Awesome, thank you. But it means that you and I have an opportunity to give things to God. So throughout this message, I've encouraged you to write down some of your fears, your anxieties, some of your stresses, and your worries. And this is your opportunity to give them to God. Now, I know that you placing a piece of paper inside of this box, that's not going to fix your problems, right? But this is a metaphor for you saying, God, I trust you. And so when you can't handle your problems, remember that there is a God who can. And so I'm going to ask Pastor Josh to just come up, and he's going to play a little something for us in the background. And just for the next couple of minutes, if you haven't written anything yet, that's cool. You have a chance to do that now. If mentally, like you just want to ascribe your problems onto that piece of paper, you can do that too. If you need another piece of paper, like just keep asking your friends, like get more, right? Because today we have an opportunity to cast our cares on Jesus, to cast our anxieties on him because he cares for you. When it seems like all is lost and you're drowning below all of your fears, your failures, your worries, this is your chance to cry out to God and raise a hand and ask him to help you up, right? To trust in him. Do not be anxious about anything. Why? Because God is near. God is near to you. Now, as you take your piece of paper over the next couple minutes and you walk up and you place it in the box, I want you to say mentally, if not even out loud, God, I'm giving these to you. I trust you with these. You've got the next couple minutes, you and God. There's going to be some opportunities to do this again if you didn't get the chance to do so, but in just kind of a little bit of a Mufasa type of moment, if we could just say, you know what, God, give this to you. Right? I'm going to trust you. Everybody, if we can, let's just say that together. God, I trust you. Let's say it. 1, 2, 3. That would be all and well if we weren't a bunch of liars. I know that inside our intentions are good. But what did I talk about earlier with those warning lights? We have a way of just kind of moving on with life. Right? Church is done. We finished the mountaintop and on to life, and now we deal with real life stuff. We walk out the doors and our family is still there and it still needs work. Our financial struggles, they didn't go away because we put a piece of paper inside of a box. We don't know why. Right? And all of those things, when we leave here, can still weigh on us. And our greatest temptation is to reach back inside the box and take it back out and start worrying about it again. Right? Some of you have probably already started thinking about that thing that you weren't going to be thinking about anymore. And this is the part that just blew my mind, and I want it to blow yours as well. When you're wanting to reach back in and control that problem, when you're wanting to reach back in and worry about that thing, I want you to mentally, if not out loud, say, God, I don't trust you with this anymore. Right? Daggers. And we do this to God. God, I trust you with this. No, not really. You can... No. Maybe I'll hold on to this. Guys, let's trust the God who can do the miraculous, to perform the impossible. And when our life is set to panic mode, can bring peace. Right? Instead of reaching back into the box, let's continue to pray first. Let's continue to give it to God first. So in the corner of the room is our prayer wall. And so if you've got things that you want to pray about, in addition to some of this stuff, I would encourage you to use that prayer wall. Give it to God. Share it within your small group. Share it in our social media. These are some of the things that are weighing on my heart. Humble yourself and let Him lift you up. Humble yourself and let Him lift you up because He cares for you. He does.